Hello, I'm Clovis Casali. Welcome to Talking Europe with a special guest. We have the pleasure to be talking today to a former Prime Minister of Italy and current European Commissioner for Economic and Financial Affairs, Paolo Gentiloni. Thanks for being with us. You are in a key position at a very sensitive time. The Covid-19 pandemic is sweeping through the world, of course. Leaders are trying to adopt the right policies to cope with its damaging effect. First, what is your assessment, economically speaking? Are we looking at a crisis worse than 2009 that plunged Europe into recession, possibly as bad as 1929?
Well, for sure, it's a completely different crisis from the one of 10 years ago. The symbol of this crisis will not remain the Lehman Brothers crack. The symbols will remain the suffering of tens of thousands of people in our hospitals, nurses and medical doctors fighting for life, and our empty streets in our cities. And this is something affecting all over the world. So I think that the economic consequences will be very serious and probably, at least in 2020, more serious than those of 10 years ago.
So what role can Europe actually play? It seems that for the time being, each member state is acting alone, trying to cope in its own way to the coronavirus crisis. What can Europe actually do?
Well, I would say that the reaction of single member states is, in any case, necessary. And it should be fast and strong. And it is, I think, fast and strong. Then I would say that we had a European strong reaction after a few days of non-coordination, so to say. And this reaction was with the suspension of our fiscal rules, with our new rules for state aid, with the strong intervention of the European Central Bank, and 1 week ago with 500 billion euros of expenditures for jobs, healthcare systems, and support to small and medium industries. I think that this is not enough. We need a step further, and this is the discussion going on nowadays in Brussels and in all European countries.
And there will be a crucial meeting in the coming days with EU leaders, a meeting to discuss a so-called coordinated economic response to the pandemic. What's at stake here? Are we talking about the actual survival of Europe if there is a lack of solidarity, and if some countries, such as Italy, feel let down by the other member states?
Yes, solidarity is absolutely key. It is crucial not only from a humanitarian point of view, which, by the way, is very important in a community, but we need solidarity also on the economic choices. And solidarity means not to mutualize the debt that we have accumulated in the last decades. Nobody is asking this. But solidarity means to find common means to face the challenges that we have now. So we should mutualize not the past, but the future. Why do we need this? Because this crisis is not a crisis affecting single countries, but the risk is that differences in the economic situation will produce different consequences in different countries. And if this divergence among European countries, especially in the euro area, will grow, all the euro area in itself will be at stake.
Clearly, you're seeking consensus, which is fair enough. You are a European Commissioner, but there are divisions between EU member states, mostly between northern countries, Germany, the Netherlands, And others, such as Spain, Italy, maybe France also. Can you reconciliate those two visions? Is that possible?
I think it is perfectly possible, not easy, but possible. And if we look to what happened in the next 40 days, we already see that things that could have been impossible 1 month ago were at the end decided, including 500 billion of common tools that were decided after hours and hours of discussion in the Eurogroup 1 week ago. So I think it is possible to reconcile this position, providing that we discuss not looking backward, because the discussion of the last 10 years is very divisive between countries asking for preventing the financial risks and countries asking to share the financial risk. This discussion lasted for 10 years. I think if we look forward and not backward to the common missions that we have, to the common goals that we have, to what we have to do together to save our industries, to save our jobs, to strengthen our healthcare system, and to avoid differences growing among European countries. With this forward-looking, I think we can overcome these differences.
Paolo
It will not
Gentiloni.
be easy, but it is possible.
Paolo Gentiloni, you're an Italian national. Many people in Italy have felt let down. Italy, of course, one of the worst affected countries in this Covid-19 pandemic. Do you think that some member states were reluctant possibly to help the Italian government, given the Eurosceptic rhetoric that we know from Salvini and other far-right figures in Italy?
Well, I don't think that they were reluctant to help for these political reasons. I think that, in fact, we had at the beginning of this pandemic difficulties in cooperation among European member states. But this happened at the beginning of March, more than 1 month ago. If you look to the situation now, we have a lot of cooperation going on. We have green lines at our borders to export food and medical equipment. We have cooperation. And I think also the Italian citizens that at the very beginning were skeptical on the European solidarity are now understanding that solidarity is there.
I'd like to ask you now about the closing of borders within the European Union. It's affecting the transport of goods, aggravating economic problems. When do you think these borders within the European Union will be lifted?
Well, I think it will be a gradual process, but I have to say that the Commission effort to keep open these borders, at least for fundamental goods and for medical equipment, were successful. So now, if we would have failed in this effort, to be very clear, our supermarket will be in a very difficult situation now for all the goods that we need.
And regarding the free movement of people, of labour within the European Union, when do you think that will happen? Will it come down to nations to decide when they reopen the borders? Or will it be discussed at a European level?
Well, yesterday we presented our guidelines for a common European exit strategy. It is clear that we have to combine the power of member states and coordination among member states. To be very clear, if we have two huge differences among member states, reopening, especially among neighbor member states, we will have a very difficult situation. You can't have 20 kilometers distance with completely different situation on restaurants, shops, business going on. So a coordination is useful for everybody without, obviously, a substitution of the Commission to national parliaments and national governments, which is not in the treaties and it is not in our intentions.
So no clear timetable yet for the time being for the reopening of borders?
Well, I think that it is for sure in a timetable for the next weeks and months. But I repeat, we don't have a closing that is blocking what is mostly needed in this moment. And what is mostly needed in this moment is to maintain, to keep medical equipment and fundamental goods moving from one European country to another. And we succeeded in keep this moving, and borders are, I think, from this point of view, perfectly coordinated.
Paolo Gentiloni, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us here on France 24. Stay tuned, more news to follow.